to address these challenges, I'd like to talk about the ingredient keys that we have defined as what's important for you to unlock your success as a raw material supplier. As you'll see here, these keys are like cogs in a machine. They're all interrelated, they're all linked, and they each work together and really take constant focus on your part. This, in a nutshell, is how we at LaunchNatural have mapped out what's necessary for building a successful raw materials business. And you'll see we've defined three specifics: connection, product focus, and professional infrastructure. So let's talk a little bit more about each of these. The first key is your connection to who your company is. And this is probably the hardest for raw material suppliers to really get their heads around. But let's define it as knowing yourself and your customer better so you can offer better service, and creating an emotional connection to your product and, more importantly, to your company, so your customers buy into who you are, not just what your product is all about. So the first discussion is around your mission. Let's assume that so far you've been growing nicely on the basis of a specific raw material that has some good science behind it and a nice story. Maybe it was discovered by a scientist friend working in the Amazon rainforest, or developed from the waste stream of a larger business within your company. Whatever your origin is, this begins to build your connection or your story and establish the framework of your mission. Now, this mission is certainly a work in progress. Let's say a company has as their mission to supply plant-based antioxidants and South American botanicals to the dietary supplement industry. So if a big food company comes knocking on your door to buy some organic yerba mate, you're not going to say, well, no, sorry, food companies aren't really part of our plan. Obviously, you're going to try and work with them. But hopefully if that same big food company comes knocking and asks you to develop a source of omega-3s from a new fish they read about, you're going to say, no, this isn't part of my mission, it's not my core expertise, and it doesn't make sense. Knowing your mission in broad terms is extremely important, even if the ways you fulfill it evolve along with your company. And this connection to mission should also include an understanding of the corporate goals of your key stakeholders. Robert likes to tell a story of the two partners who owned a company together. One was interested in selling the business, cashing out, and retiring in 3 years. The other wanted to build the business as a legacy for his children. You can imagine that discussions about capital expenditures, new product development, really any long-term decisions would not have been very easy for these two executives. As another example, I was involved with a company that was owned by two men who started out focused on the same goals. Over the years, though, their philosophies began to change. One was more cautious and wanted slow and steady guaranteed growth, while the other wanted to take chances and invest in riskier propositions. The partnership ended up dissolving. It wasn't pretty, and so much of the animosity could have been avoided if the management team had just had regular conversations about their goals. At LaunchNatural, we run Scale Passion retreats every 6 months to keep the management team on track and make sure everyone's goals stay in alignment. This brings us to the second segment of the connection piece, the connection to your channel of distribution and the industry you're serving. It's the same theme, really. You need to understand where you're going with your ingredient. There's a great blog on our website that Robert wrote for end product companies about not answering the phone when Target or Walmart calls. And that's the same story here. When you're starting out, you need to be realistic about where your ingredient fits best. If you have a high price, very unique raw material that hasn't really reached mainstream awareness, chances are starting with Walmart or a multinational food company is not the best idea. You need to build the market with the companies that will understand your story and share that message with their customers. On the other hand, if you have a great new spin on an existing category, superfruits, for example, you may be able to choose a different path to market because your ingredient already has visibility. What matters is that you understand your product and the channel strategy has been mapped out. And tied into this is an understanding of the industry in which you want to play, be it foods, supplements, or personal care, for example. The rules are different, the regulations are different, the pricing is very different, and it's all too easy to falter when you haven't thoroughly defined and investigated your target market. I'm working now with an ingredient supplier that has a wonderful certified organic, all-natural antimicrobial ingredient. It has tons of studies, third-party testing, worldwide certifications. It has great functionality. It's water-soluble. It can be used in foods, cosmetics, other personal care applications. Everything about it is great, except the fact that it doesn't have EPA registration in the U.S. This is stopping us in our tracks again and again. The product will ultimately be successful, but it's taking a lot longer than my client ever expected because of the regulatory hoops he didn't know existed. Being in touch with your potential customer base also helps as you plan your growth, work with your supply partners, and scale your manufacturing. If you're planning to sell to Kraft, they'll have different requirements than if you're selling to even the largest supplement company. This is an extremely important point and one that we'll get into later when we talk more about the company infrastructure segment of your plan. The third aspect of the connection key is the connection to the end consumer. While this is not your immediate customer, it is the ultimate destination for your product, and understanding them as well as possible will help you sell your raw materials more effectively. I used to sell cereal grasses, which is barley grass, wheatgrass, alfalfa, very high in nutrition, very challenging to the taste buds. So we knew that convincing consumers to mix 10 grams of a gritty, green, probably smelly powder into a glass of water and drink it every day was probably not a job for a Walmart salesperson. To be honest, with this example, even the large supplement companies only got interested when a big national brand launched a successful greens food product and raised consumer awareness. So the message is know who your end consumer is and what type of customer can reach them best. Don't discount the jump on the bandwagon guys that you can pick up once the ingredient gains visibility, but it's going to be an uphill climb if you're relying on them initially to tell your story for you. One other quick example. I had a client that had a product backed by science, strong science. Harvard University shows significant effects on the health condition they're targeting. They talked to everyone who would listen about this great science. They even bottled the ingredient to sell direct on an e-commerce site. But no one's interested and they haven't been successful and they don't really understand why. LaunchNatural calls this loving your baby, your product or your ingredient, so much that you're not thinking about what the customer wants, only how great your baby is. In this case, this is about the science. Science is extremely important, but selling solely on the basis of great science doesn't always work, especially on a retail shelf or sitting on a website waiting for traffic. Like it or not, natural products, especially, are an emotional purchase, and offering a connection to the story behind the product resonates with the consumer. If you understand this and can communicate it to your customer, they'll do a better job of selling your ingredient story. Not to mention how much easier it is to sell your product if you know more about the end consumer than your customer does. They'll love it if you give them advice on how to appeal to their audience. When I worked on designing a custom formulation for a large supplement manufacturer, they wanted me to write the marketing copy for their collateral and give them advice on what they could say on their label. Fair or unfair, marketers expect suppliers to be experts on the science, the claim support, and the spin on their finished products. The more information you have at your fingertips, the better a supplier you are to your immediate customers.